Thank you very much, Tēnā. My name is Brigadier Hugh McCaslin, and I'm the Chief of Defence Intelligence at Headquarters NZDF. I'd like to thank, firstly, NZDIA for the opportunity to speak this afternoon with my colleague Matt Ottaway from the Ministry of Defence about the Joint Intelligence Program itself. We're going to do a bit of a split shift in terms of the presentation today. There is only 4 slides. I will cover the first slide and the last slide, and I'll introduce Matt to come in for the middle 2 anyway, with a bit more detail around the content itself. But really today is an opportunity not only to discuss the JIP, but how the JIP itself sits within a framework about the transformation of our intelligence enterprise within NZDF. So you will see the slide on the screen that represents 4 bullets that I will touch on, but I'm not going to read the slide per se, but I think there's a number of important points there to cover. One obviously touches on what our mission is. Secondly, about the importance, increasing importance of publicly available information to intelligence enterprises writ large, and data, and the scope, scale, and depth of data now that is available, and how we need to seek to collaborate with industry and academia as well to make best use of what is available. So some estimates envisage that 90% of what we will analyse to produce decision support products through the intelligence enterprise for decision makers will be publicly available in the near future. And that obviously is quite a significant shift to perhaps how defence intelligence organisations have operated in the past, where the acquisition of information and data has been from sensitive collection sources. Now, that's not to say that the sensitive sources will go away, but it's how we make the most of that opportunity with publicly available information or open source to be able to inform and enrich the decision support products that we need to provide for our decision makers. Now, the Joint Intelligence Program itself sits within the context of a wider enterprise reform within NZDF's intelligence enterprise. And the JIP itself provides a vehicle for us to create and realise our vision of a federated and integrated enterprise. And you might ask what federated and integrated means. Well, in short, the federated aspect is how we effectively prioritise and coordinate our intelligence requirements right across NZDF, so we get the best return out of our resource that we have, while also looking at where we need to invest to take advantage of opportunities like open source. It's also ensuring that our soldiers, sailors, airmen and women, and our civilian workforce have the right IT and the right infrastructure to be able to deliver the mission. It's also about having common tool sets, but also, from an integrated sense, common policies, procedures, a learning environment, standards that enable us to federate the workload and get the best return on what is a highly skilled and finite workforce. I'll now hand across to Matt and get him to touch on the next couple of slides around where we see industry collaboration with the enterprise. Matt.
Thanks, Hugh, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Ottaway. I'm the Integrated Project Team Lead for the Joint Intelligence Project with the New Zealand Ministry of Defence. As Hugh's touched on, JIP and the intelligence enterprise are very much working collaboratively in how do we make the New Zealand Defence Intelligence Enterprise better. From an industry perspective, what we are trying to establish within the Defence Intelligence Enterprise is summarised on the slide. One of the areas that has been identified that the intelligence enterprise is required to have to make it better is an ability or an improved ability to collaborate with industry, to utilize industry skill sets, knowledge, and experience to better allow the intelligence enterprise to fulfill its mission. Now, I'm also not so optimistic to realize that what this will require, what we are trying to achieve within the intelligence enterprise, does not mean that there is no change required from NZDF's behalf. So we're well aware that the current procurement and acquisition process may be not as fit for purpose to secure or obtain the products and services we may be seeking to achieve within the intelligence enterprise. So behind the scenes, or what we are working on at the moment, is identifying the current process and identifying where there might be gaps or barriers that do not enable you as industry to better collaborate with the intelligence enterprise. So what we are trying to achieve with this industry collaboration is effectively trying to establish an agile framework given the dynamic nature of the information environment, as you will have heard from Nick and Pete previously. And of course, acknowledging the fact that this is an environment that never sits still. And if anyone can describe what the environment is going to look like in 5 years' time, they're a far better person than I am. So we've identified that agility is going to be critical to what the intelligence enterprise is going to need of the future. That's both an agility of that ability to collaborate, but also the agility that sits resident within the products, services and capabilities that we will seek to fund, for want of a better term, probably establish being the most opportune word. So knowing that you as industry will want to understand what timings we're working to, these timings are indicative, so I'll stress that. What we are looking to do between now and Q2 of next year is explore opportunities for small-scale collaboration with industry. One of the outcomes we'll be trying to achieve with this is identify where the processes and procedures as they exist within defence may not work, or may need to be modified to better suit the outcomes that we require. We'll be seeking to understand what capabilities are resident within industry that could help support intelligence outcomes. And most critically, and the point I'd like to raise today, and to seek further information from industry in the next phase of this summit in 6 weeks' time, is where does risk lie with the Defence Force? Where does risk lie with you and industry? And what does that risk look like? I understand and appreciate that there are a number of industry agencies where your staff numbers being below 10 would not be that brilliantly suited or supported by a decision-making process within defence that can be measured in months. So we want to be able to understand where your risks lie and where our risks lie. Therefore, we can start thinking through, well, how can we mitigate or reduce those risks for both parties, whilst also being mature enough to understand that risk will always be present, but doing as much as we can to alleviate that. At this stage, our indicative approval milestone is going to be tied to budget 21, so approximately May of 2021. From that point forward, should we be approved, we'll be seeking to establish the processes we deem necessary to enable the intelligence enterprise to collaborate with industry more effectively and more efficiently. We're also understanding and mature enough to realize that we may not get it right in the first instance, and built into those processes needs to be an ability to constantly assess and reassess how the processes are suiting that time in the future, and also to be able to adjust as new technologies or new services become available. So what I'll do now is hand back over to Hugh to talk through the areas we are looking for industry assistance?
Thanks, Matt. So the slide outlines where our current thinking is, and I think what is Matt touched on quite eloquently earlier on is the fact that this is where our thinking is at today. And we also appreciate this is such a dynamic environment that this will continue to evolve. But you'll see 5 or so areas that relate not only just to the intelligence enterprise itself, but also more broadly to what Peter touched on prior to our briefing around the information domain. But in particular, we're looking to seek how we develop a collaborative approach with industry. Now, while Matt's talked about obviously some of the challenges based on how perhaps Defence have traditionally engaged industry, and with our model for that, we appreciate that this is a much more fluid environment, and that expertise that we want to realise may sit in quite small companies within New Zealand. And that's in particular how we can leverage that expertise to manage big data, but also develop the means to be able to triage that data, visualise it, and develop techniques for machine learning that allow you to triage so you get the best return out of the human factor, which is the analyst itself. The second relates to tool sets, both those that are commercially available, but also how we can adapt through coding development as well to get the best return out of a broad range of data sets. You'll note we have highlighted research as a service, and NZDF currently has commercial arrangements with commercial providers that provide data, and in particular when it comes to overhead data from commercial satellite companies. But we're also well aware there are an increasing numbers of providers within the commercial sector that can also assist with research. When I've got a finite workforce, if I can allocate that workforce onto our most important intelligence problem sets and away from things that we can potentially buy in, then that provides a better return on that human resource. The next bullet relating to expertise around techniques for market analysis sits more within the information operations area than it does perhaps in intelligence, although the two are becoming increasingly closer together. And this is about the ability to understand the market itself from an IO perspective. And therefore, how do you message when you have competing narratives? And those types of skill sets are ones that have traditionally sat within that marketing aspect. The final piece relates on how we can surge skill sets to support specific problem-solving activities or problem sets in the intelligence domain. And while we've spoken, I think, in some detail about data and being data-driven as an intelligence enterprise has been key for the near future and into the future, the ability to also collaborate to solve problems is going to be key. Now, with that, there will be a requirement for us as an NZDF and Defence to assist industry with ensuring we have folks with the skill sets appropriately cleared with the necessary security clearance if we are operating with more classified information. But as I highlighted earlier, a large proportion of this data is open source and available. And it's how we establish the mechanisms for those collaborative environments to make best use of those skill sets that sit without or sit out in the New Zealand community to help us develop, to address the security challenges that we will face into the future. Thank you for the opportunity today to address the forum itself. Both Matt and I appreciate this time to engage, and we look forward over the coming months to be able to implement some of the thinking that we've presented today. Thank you.